me know if y'all can hear me. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, because I will. Yes! Okay, but if y'all want me to take it down or talk with it, I will. Okay, all right. So, yeah, Rachel and I, I love Rachel and we are close friends, but she must have forgotten how to spell my name. So I just wanted to point that out.
Progress, not perfection.
Just say friend.
I just have to give her a hard
Say
time.
friend.
I'll still spell it a weird way. ASHLEIGH. Yeah, fancy. Okay, so my name is Ashley Thompson Klein. Y'all probably know me as Ashley Thompson, but I have found somebody to keep me, and so now it's Klein. Yeah, I never thought it would happen, but it actually did. My sobriety date is January 26th, 2018. So, got a little bit of time under my belt. That surprised me too when I say that date. I'm like, what? Like, how can that be? I grew up in Chapin, South Carolina, or actually Little Mountain. So I'm from a small town. I went to Chapin High School. My friends that I hung with in high school didn't participate in drinking or drugging. So I started later on in life. And I found sobriety later on in life. So that just wasn't my thing. I'm not saying that it didn't happen and it wasn't going on, but it just wasn't in my network of friends. So I did very well in high school. Made good grades. I ran cross country and track. I was very active in positive things. My mom raised me. My parents got divorced when I was 12, but we'll get to that. But basically, that's it. I live with my mom and my stepdad. So I went to college in Charleston. That's where I wanted to go. That's where my half brother went. I saw his graduation. I loved Charleston, loved the beach, and thought it would just be, great. Sounds good. So, okay. So I thought that was the place to go. So when I went there, I started doing well in school. I was a international business major, Spanish minor, and I had a passion for that. But my passion changed abruptly, which was a good thing. We'll get to that. But I did very well, and then I started dating this guy, and I did not realize that I broke up with my high school sweetheart, who he was like an excellent guy. Just to be real, he's like a physician's assistant for a doctor at MUSC now. So yeah, really good idea, Ash. Let's dump him. One of my first and many bad mistakes. So I started dating another guy, and he was a really heavy drinker. I didn't really know too much about, what an alcoholic was, or people that struggle with alcoholism. That's funny though, because it's all within my family. But I just never really picked up on it, and hence I grew up with my mom. So things got really bad. I started to drink with him, and that wasn't the first time that I ever, got drunk. I got drunk at like first week at the beach, so that was my first drunk. I was 16, so that was in high school, but needless to say, it was something that was just like that one experience, and I was like, oh wow, that did not go well, and I don't think I'm going to do that again, because that was not fun, type thing. So my first drunk was at the age of 16, but I did not do that anymore. So started dating this guy, then I started drinking, and then it got to the point where things were not going well between him and I. And I'm driving around drinking and driving and just acting like a crazy person. I was missing class. All things that were a priority to me ended up not being a priority. I went to college with some of my friends from high school, so you know how things happen in a small town, and even if you travel to another little town, they're going to look out for you. So they were reporting back to my parents, my mom. And so I was like, dang, So very abruptly, I was taken out of school. My dad and my stepmom lived in Beaufort, South Carolina, and my mom got my dad, which is, Beaufort's not far from Charleston, to come over and get me. And it was literally to the point where it was like, Ashley, you're leaving now, or I'm wrapping you up in this rug and you're going that way. And I was like, ooh, wow, this is intense. Okay, I think I'll go. So I left school, had really no idea whether I was going to return to school. I had never really experienced anything like this before, to where I had lost total control of my life. Now, mind you, in that period of time, I didn't really look at it that way. So I went to stay with my dad in Beaufort for a week, and then I went back home with my mom in Chapin. And I was there for, I guess, a couple of months, and then I was like, well, I need to do something, How about I go live with my granny in Beaufort, South Carolina? So I could be some company to her. My grandfather had passed away, so my granny was living there alone, and she could, enjoy the company. And I kind of manipulated myself into that little situation where I was I don't know. It was just weird. I have a very good relationship with my mom, but I guess just coming back home after being gone for a little bit, I just needed to do something else. So I moved to Beaufort, and that's where things. Oh yeah, and I forgot to tell y'all that I am a member of the Chapin and Starting Over Home group, and I do have a sponsor and blah blah blah. But I was supposed to say that like 5 minutes ago. But hey, so then I moved in with my grandmother, and I started bartending and serving, and so I thought that was right up my alley, something to do, make a little extra money. Well, I didn't quite realize that would start fueling my love for alcohol and my addiction. And what was funny is it was in Beaufort, South Carolina, so there's like the ritzy, hoitsy Beaufort, South Carolina town, and then you go out to St. Helena Island, and it's like you could get away with anything out there, and nobody's gonna know, type thing. And so I hung out more so on St. Helena Island, and I started to notice my dad and my stepmom frequenting the bars that I was working in, and they were there a lot, like a lot. And I was like, I'm starting to kind of figure things out. So then I started drinking a lot with my dad, and then with the restaurant business and the bar business, I'm sure y'all all heard, there's a lot of extracurricular drugs involved. How the hell else are you supposed to stay up all night? You know what I mean? So I started experimenting with those, and I found out that my dad and my stepmom were doing the same thing. Odd. Wow. So, with my dad not raising me, and I would go see my dad on the weekends and everything, I missed that. He could behave for a weekend. But whenever I was in my 20s and was living in the same town with him, it's kind of hard to hide what your hobbies are. And it just so happened that we had the same hobbies. So, I was going into it that it was a good thing, but it was not. So, I had a father figure that I was using and drinking with. And as y'all, I'm sure know, things started losing control for me again, in even a worse way, because this disease is progressive. So my friends that I had made in Beaufort, and even my father, which was odd, started reporting back to my mom that I was not doing well, that I was acting reckless, they were in fear of my life and me harming someone else, and so on and so on. And the next thing I know, I am involuntarily committed in 2010. Oh wait, before that, sorry. This might have been a little mishap to why I was involuntarily committed, but I got my first DUI. Yeah, and a possession of cocaine. Yeah, at 26 years old, so that was great. And I was like, how do I keep this from my mom? We're finding out in Chapin, and Dad knows. He was, at the jail, picking me up after I got out. I got my, PR'd out or whatever, because it was my first time being in trouble. But things were progressing. I was getting in trouble with the law. I had never really experienced that before. And so, but I was chalking it up to like, I'm young, you know, everybody does dumb things at 26, like whatever, you know, slap on the wrist, let's move on. I had really no idea what exactly was happening with me. So, like I was saying, my dad was reporting back to my mom, my friends were reporting back to my mom, my dad was growing concerned for me, because my dad, you know, his life wasn't crumbling around him. He was still successful in his job, you know, had a nice house on the marsh, you know, so on and so on. You know, when I do things hard, and, you know, everything crumbles around me, and I'm sitting there, well, what happened, you know? So, I got voluntarily committed to rehab. And so, when I went in there, I was super pissed, because it's like, how can my dad, who was probably doing all these behaviors, drinking and drugging, oh yeah, and my dad's a liquor salesman for Ben Arnold in Columbia. Go figure, huh? Yeah. So, and he had, you know, he moved around to like Beaufort County and Greenville County, and was like, that was his territory, and he'd go around to liquor stores and, you know, sell for Ben Arnold. So that was kind of odd. Isn't it funny how it all comes together? So I was really angry, because, like, you know, he was probably doing these things with me just the weekend before. But then all of a sudden, I'm, you know, voluntarily committed. So they obviously had been filing these paperwork, these affidavits or whatever. You know, friends of mine, you know, were writing, you know, how I was behaving, and then I go in there for my interview and answer all the questions correctly. Because I'm like, I don't have any pending charges. What's the big deal? I'll be truthful. And also in my mind, I wasn't thinking like, how much are you drinking a day? You know, to me, it wasn't so bad. But apparently to the counselors, it was not good. So, you know, so I went to rehab, and I'll have to say that I did learn, you know, some things at Morris Village. But, you know, I still had that reservation, and I still had that whole mindset, like the whole alcoholism thing, the whole blah, blah, blah thing, you know, I just was like, this, you know, this isn't, I can beat this. I'm not powerless over this. This is not a big deal. I'm going to learn these tools, and I'll be able to participate in these little fun activities and have control over my life. No. So I get out, and I'm supposed to follow a court order of at least up to a year outpatient treatment. I'd already done outpatient treatment to get my license back, so I'm like, this should be easy, you know, whatever. So it didn't sink in that I had a court order that I was supposed to follow, and that if I didn't follow the court order by a judge, that I could probably go to jail for that. So I didn't finish the outpatient, and they came to pick me up and put me in jail for like 3 days, just kind of like, hey, wake up. You need to finish this. You know, you can't just be doing, you know, just because you went and came home, you can't be doing whatever you want to be doing. So they drove me in the back of a cop car back up to Morris Village from Beaufort. So it was about a 3-hour drive in the back of a cop car to rehab again. So now this time, they kind of planted the seed. And I started to realize that the things I was doing was only getting worse, that I was losing control. I still had that reservation that I would drink again, but that I would gain, you know, control over it. But it was starting to become more aware of how damaging this was to my life. This time, I had my mom come visit me on the weekends when I was allowed to have weekend visits in Morris Village. And it planted the seed, and when I got out of Morris Village that time, I moved back home with my mom, and I left Beaufort County. I knew that Beaufort County was not good for me, and if I were to go back there, that I would continue the same behavior. So when I had to go to Loredac, and I found an AA meeting. I think it was the Lunchbox Group was the first AA meeting that I went to when I moved back home. And at first, so I was 30 at this point, and I was looking around the room like, God damn, all these people are old. And I'm like, okay. But more time in the rooms and met all the different people, all different ages, men, women, I fell in love with AA. And I felt, like I was home. I got a sponsor. I worked the steps. Realized that age is just a number and did not matter in the terms of these rooms, And I got rid of my little ego and that I was different type of thing, and started doing better. At that point in time, I decided to go to cosmetology school and maybe try to get a trade, since I wasn't going back to college, or not in that moment in time. I definitely was not stable enough to do so. So I had like 8 months of sobriety, and then I would relapse. And then I would have 8 months of sobriety. I don't know what it was with the number 8, but I swear that's how it rolled, It was wild. And I refused to ever pick up a white chip. I'm just going to be honest. Like, I was one of those that just didn't show, like, I wasn't going to admit every time that I relapsed because I was a chronic relapser. Almost got kicked out of my cosmetology school for missing so many days. I was struggling, and I was, honest with my mom, and then I was honest with the director of the cosmetology school at Kenneth Schuler, that I struggled with addiction and alcoholism, and that I was really trying to get my life together, but it just was not happening, as quickly as we would like it to, that I was still struggling. So I really had the support that I needed, and I got back on my feet, and somewhat, and I graduated from Kenneth Schuler for hair school, and I was doing okay. But so then there came a period in time. I finished my outpatient, so the court order was clear. I was free of like any kind of consequences as far as that regard. And I started. Some of the girls that I went to cosmetology school were in support of my recovery, but some of the girls didn't really understand, and it's just kind of like, well, I'm not going to tell you what to do type thing. So some of the girls, we would go to Mexican restaurants, and they would have margaritas, so I started having margaritas. And I was like, I'm doing pretty good, it's just like a couple of margaritas, and I'm actually taking my ass home and going to bed and getting up and doing whatever the next day. Well, it doesn't take long. Eventually, I found another bar to go to. I'm there all night. I never got a job with cosmetology stuff. I ended up running into some inheritance money from my grandmother passing once all that was resolved. So don't give an alcoholic a bunch of money when they're not stable and realize that they have an issue and able to. That's a bad idea. And so I got that. I blew through it all. I bought me a new car, but guess what? I wrecked it. So it was just, and see, my dad was trying to hold that money for 4 years till I could get right, and so I could use it for something to benefit my life and do something smart with it. Well, me, I was bitching, manipulating, and I'm doing better. And he was dosing it out a little bit, and then finally he had enough in my mouth and was like, I'm tired of you, hounding me about this, and here you go. Well, it was the worst idea ever. So I ended up in 2015, I started drinking again, and one day I had been up all night, and I didn't even know I was in Newberry County until I got arrested and was taken to Newberry County. Yeah. So I hit a Mack truck head on, an 18-wheeler. I was messing around with my radio, and I looked up, and I was in his lane, just enough to nick me enough to just flip my car 4 times. So my car was smashed. This new car that I bought with my inheritance. Yay. So I fled the scene of the accident. Obviously I had quit going to the rooms in AA. I was out there. I was out on a run again, thinking that, it first started I could have some margaritas and it'd be okay. Well, here I am hitting an 18-wheeler. So I fled the scene of the accident because I didn't want any, law enforcement involved. I'd already, gotten another DUI already when I was 26. So I I was in my early 30s. I can't remember the exact age. So it's just getting worse as time is passing on. So I hopped in the car of this random woman that actually picked me up and took me to my friend's house. She didn't know me for shit. I had blood on me, and she just picked me up. And so it ended up where when I went back to the house, one of my friends was not really one of my friends. I think he was trying to get me in trouble, honestly. But whatever, he called the ambulance and had them come get me from the house. And I was like, I'm trying to wait down, bide time, and be sober by the time I have to talk to the police. You messing me up. And I didn't know at that time that I could refuse an ambulance ride. So I went to the ambulance, Park Ridge. I love how all this stuff happens in my hometown. It's great, where everybody knows me. So I was like, I had a plan. I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna tell them that I'm fine. I'm fine. Ignore the blood. I just have like a little scratch here, and I'm fine. I don't need to be checked out. Let me sign these papers and get out of here. So I signed the papers, and as I'm walking through the hospital Park Ridge parking lot, I hear Elizabeth Thompson. God, I hate my name, my government name, the Elizabeth part. You'll find out later, even more so. Every time you get in trouble, it's Elizabeth Thompson, Elizabeth Thompson, Elizabeth Thompson. In the newspapers, Elizabeth Thompson, WIS, Elizabeth Thompson. Thank you. So I turn around, and I'm like, yes, sir. He was like, were you the accident in Newberry County? I'm like, Newberry County? Newberry County? And he was like, I need you to do a field sobriety test. Of course, I failed it. And he took me to Newberry County. I had no idea my car was even in Newberry County at that time. So then that was just another very bad moment in my life. Very shameful. My mom found out about it and went and saw the car. I got charged with leaving the scene of the accident and another DUI. Well, we decided to get a lawyer, and I ended up in court getting reckless driving and still leaving the scene of the accident. And I thought I had done good in this, but when I got my insurance, it's, a DUI is just the same as reckless driving, like in terms of how much you're going to pay for insurance, so it's just like, why would it, okay. But this lawyer, he has since passed away, but he wrote very close to our family, and he helped me out in another big case that I'm about to tell you about. But he was really hard on me, and like he saw the potential in me and how young I was, and I guess other cases he had dealt with because he's a criminal defense lawyer, and he just wanted me to be better. So I had lied, of course, to him and told him that I wasn't in the other lane of the Mack truck, and he was like, well, Ashley, by these calculations and the way that it looks like, on, with this report, it looks like you were in their lane. Okay, I was in their lane. He's like, I know, he's like, but I'm sitting here trying to defend you. But, so 2015 was not a good year. I ended up, my mom, so this was the whole idea. My mom was gonna buy me, like one of her old work friends, her mom was living in this house in a neighborhood in Chapin. I wasn't staying at the lake house anymore. We were gonna sell it. And so it was time for me to move somewhere else, and I did not want to go back and live with my mom and my stepdad. My stepdad and I didn't really get along that good. He was one of those, I know everything and you know nothing. That didn't work well with me. And he struggled with alcoholism too. Long story short, that is what he passed away from. So, years down the road. So, I had this house in Firebridge in Chapin. And the deal was for me to start working and making some money, and it was a really good deal, so that's when my mom went forth with this. And my mom was trying to set up, a responsibility for me to be able to have something of my own and do things the right way. So once I got settled and I could start making, payments to her, then she would turn the mortgage over to me, and it'd be in my name, it'd be something of mine. Well, of course, I screwed that up too. So in these bars that I started hanging out in, I started meeting people, so I liked cocaine. That's how I drove home, okay? So I could get it in Beaufort, but I wasn't familiar with where my hometown is. It wasn't my thing. So I started asking around. I'm just being real with you. So I started asking around, and I found meth. That's all I could find here. And boy, is that a hell of a drug. Stay away. So at this point in time, I am using meth and drinking every day, all day. I have no car because it was smashed. And my life is just really at a standstill. There was no way, my mom was wanting to take me to ADSAP so I could get my license back, but I couldn't stay sober long for her to even come and get me and take me to do this class. I mean, I was way off bad at this point. It was almost like if I wanted to do better for myself, I couldn't at this time. I mean, I just absolutely couldn't. And so some of the people that were using meth, I found out that they were also meth dealers, so it was great. And so they were coming to stay at my house and in and out of my house. It was a flop house. It just, oh yeah, I'm a people pleaser, by the way, if you haven't noticed. I'm a yes girl, and I'm really trying to be working on the no part. So I let people run me over, and I was very naive too. I was sheltered, somewhat as a child. I didn't start this big deal stuff until later on in life, so I really had no idea of how bad consequences could be. And I didn't realize, guilty by association, all the things I know now due to my lovely lifestyle that I had created. And so everybody in the neighborhood hated me. People were in and out of my house at all hours of the morning, drinking, and people were my mom was telling me that people were complaining about fights and arguments out, and I'm like, well, what me? She's like, well, whoever you had in your house, And so it got real bad. So it got so bad to where I couldn't even tell these people, that I wanted to make a change, and that I was trying to do better for myself, and that could they please not come over, and could they please not come over in the middle of the night, or whenever they wanted to, and, that this was my house, and I mean, it got to the point where my mom, this is an example of something that happened, my mom came to spend the night with me, and we were kind of trying to do this support thing to where I could get back right, get my license, start working, I could start doing what the plan was originally. My mom was so scared that she brought her gun over to spend the night with me. And this dude, who I knew who he was, just came, all doors were locked, but he got himself in my house at like 3 a.m. that scares my mom to death. So like these people had no boundaries. And yes, they were my friends, and I was hanging out with them, and I was, putting myself in that situation. But I realized real quick that, there was going to have to be some definite changes, and it wasn't just by me, requesting that they leave me alone. So, I decided that I was going to start making some changes, and then all of a sudden, I noticed that my ankle was really swollen, and it was like elephantitis style. And I was like, I ran cross country and track, I danced, not a stripper. But I danced, and I have been athletic, and it was just really odd. And so I was so scared that I asked my mom to take me to the doctor with her, and she just so happened to be going to get her like carpal tunnel type thing, going on. So I went with her, and thank God they had me in different offices. I was obviously in my 30s, so why would my mom be in there with me? But it was like our family doctors, so they had known us our whole life, and I didn't really know how it was going to be, considering they got me in real quick, whether I was going to have to be in there with my mom, like whatever. Well, they gave me a urine test, and I didn't pay any mind to it, it's just like, well, whatever, okay. And I'm in the room, and the doctor's messing around, like poking on here, and I'm like, dude, why are you messing right here? When my ankle is my ankle. And he was like, does that hurt? No. He was like, well, you did a urine test and you're pregnant. And I almost died right then and there. Well, in that moment, it changed everything for me. Everything in the progression of my life, onward out. According to his testing, I was 5 months pregnant. I had been using and smoking meth for that whole 5 months. So I was pretty much screwed from the jump. You know, in the laws of the law, I mean, in the eyes of the law, you know, even if I would have stopped right then, you know, I still would have been tested positive, and probably, you know, for the child too. So, you know, we're dealing with people that don't really understand addiction nor care to understand addiction. They're just going to look at you like you're a piece of crap. I was distraught. Me and my mom tried to come up with some plans of what I needed to do, and one of the options was abortion. Well, I was too scared of that. I was going to have to go to North Carolina in 2 separate trips. It just wasn't my thing. I just couldn't do it, you know. And at that moment in time, my mom quit talking to me. So, you know, I had a lot of resentment in that through the process. But towards the end, when we actually, you know, talked about it, I realized where she was coming from. But I really needed her during that time. So I'm going to be honest, as y'all are probably not going to be shocked, but you know, before I would probably omit this part. But even after I found out I was pregnant, I continued on. I continued to use, and I continued to drink, and I did not stop, and I could not stop. And I had, you know, a few people here and there, you know, let me know what I was facing, because like I said, I've never been in real trouble before. A DUI, whatever, some rehab, but this is a big deal, and I didn't really realize how big of a deal it was until I went through it myself, sadly enough. You know, I guess I was thinking that it was going to be different. So I ended up having a stillborn, and she tested positive, obviously, for meth. And that was a felony charge. And the Chapin police, which was someone that had years before me, but he had grew up in the same town, and he's not a chief of police anymore. He was at that time, but like he had been at Chapin High School. He knew the small town effects. He knew that I was small town, and he knew I grew up there. And you know, everybody was just really shocked that this is happening to Ashley Thompson. You know, and it's just like, well. You know, he didn't play any games, regardless of whether we grew up in the same hometown. You know, I was getting a felony charge from the hospital when I went to the hospital. Oh yeah, so I had realized that I could refuse an ambulance ride, and I did this time. And it was probably the worst mistake that I had made. I was at home. What had happened? I was at home in the house in Chapin by myself. All of a sudden, I had labor pains, and it put me in fetal position. And we called the ambulance. The ambulance, you know, at that moment in time, there was another girl in the house with me, and she called the ambulance. But after, when everything happened, I was by myself. But the ambulance came out, checked me out, strongly suggested that I needed to get to the hospital, but the labor pains had stopped. And to me, I thought, you know, hey, I've seen these movies all the time, you know, it's Braxton Hicks. I don't even know what the heck I was talking about, you know, and that the labor pains had stopped, and I was fine. You know, and I really, in that moment of time, was not in a good headspace, and I could not make the correct decision. And also I was fearful, and I will be honest, I was fearful of what was yet to come, because I knew I was going to be in some serious trouble. And so I was trying to buy time again, and you know, all the other times I've tried to buy time, it didn't go so hot. So I stayed at home, and that's when I had the stillborn, and she tested positive. So from the hospital, the Chapin police was telling me that I was facing 10 years max. And I was like, oh my God, you know? And so there's about a 2-year waiting period until my sentencing. And I got the same lawyer that had helped me with the accident with the Mack truck. And he strongly suggested that I start doing these things to make some changes. Go to AA, go back to AA, stop drinking, stop using, you know, do everything you can to make these changes, to show that you're really, you know, actually trying to make these changes. And I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I was just, you know, I was so traumatized about what happened. I was all alone in that. I was not expecting that to be the outcome whatsoever, at all. I mean, I could have thought a lot of worst case scenarios, but that was not one of them. And I was not prepared for that at all, nor had I ever experienced anything like that. And so this 2-year waiting period of what my future holds for me spiraled me out of control even worse so. I was using more, I was drinking more, and I wasn't doing not a darn thing to prove that I was trying to make any changes. And so I even missed my court date for General Sessions Court, which is a big deal. You don't miss that court at all. So they came and got me. I pretty much sealed the deal. You know, my lawyer had already contacted me and told me that since I had, missed court, that I was going to get 8-year sentence, 2 years shy of the max. And I was like, no way. And he was like, I told you, Ashley, you need to go to court. And I told you, I've been guiding you on what you need to do, and this is serious. And, and he just kind of became a family friend and just somebody that showed some great concern for me. And even as my lawyer, there was nothing that he could do to help me at this point. I had to do something for my damn self. So I sealed the deal. I'd never been in any real trouble before. And I went to Lexington County, and I was in there for 2 weeks, and then I went to General Sessions. And I did, in fact, get 8 years. But before he hit the gavel down, but in my eyes, 8 years is like a lifetime. And even though before he hit the gavel, he says to spit it down to 4 years time and 4 years prison. 4 years prison and 4 years probation, excuse me. So I'm still going and then he hit the gavel. So I'm still thinking 4 years is, holy crap, I'm gonna be away from everything that I love. Like, what am I gonna do, And so I went to prison, and they took me to Leith, which is the maximum security. And I was writing and receiving, at Camille. You're receiving at Camille before you get taken to Leith. But I was writing from receiving, asking to be in the ATU program, which is the Addictions Treatment Unit. So while, I'm sitting in prison and I'm finally realizing, hey, I have an addiction and I am powerless. Hey, I can admit I am powerless and my life is definitely unmanageable. I had no problem admitting that my life was unmanageable before. It was very apparent, But for me to actually, say that I'm powerless over something was a huge deal. It was so freeing, But I'm, stuck behind those walls and was able to change my mindset. And I was writing to be in the ATU program, the Addictions Treatment Unit. Normally, you're not allowed to be on that unit until the end of your stay in prison, and it's kind of a transition period to where maybe they could help you for a halfway house or whatnot. So it's a stabilization in between, prison and being acclimated back in, transition back into society. Well, I was at Leith in maximum security, which I did not want to be there. I wanted to be at Camille because it was closer to my mom to come visit me instead of having to drive to Greenwood to visit me every weekend. She could just go to Broad River Road. I was going to be there for some time. So they came and got me after 2 weeks, told me to pack up my bag, that I was going, and they wouldn't tell me where I was going. They're not allowed to. I'm property of the state. I'm just a number. They don't even, I don't get to know what I'm doing, what they're doing with me. I'm just there. So I had a feeling that it was the ATU program, so they sent me to Camille. I was able to be closer to my mom, and she came to see me every weekend. My mind had totally changed, even from the depths of despair and going through such a tragic, experience. As y'all can tell, I'm hard-headed, and I have to learn the hard way, like really hard way. But that's just me, unfortunately. So behind those walls, I just changed my mindset. I got in the program, and I was just learning the recovery tools, coping skills, networking with other people. Truth be told, there's a lot of women in the ATU program do not want recovery. They're just there because they have to be, or they'll go to lockup if they don't finish the program. I wanted to be in the program. It's a 6-month program. I had a great counselor that beat me down to build me back up, and I mean beat me down to build me back up. And that's exactly what I needed. I didn't need a sugarcoat, you're from Chapin, you got everything you ever wanted. I grew up good, even with these hardships, if anybody could smooth it over, trust me, my mom was going to try to do it. but she couldn't smooth over this one, you know? And so my counselor, you know, reminded me that I wasn't a bad person, that I did bad, but that I am not bad, you know? And I learned about the people pleasing, and I didn't even know that there was a term for us until I went to prison, you know, the people pleasing, and that she was like, Ashley, when you get out, if you continue to people please and allow to say yes to these things that are going to destroy you and put you in situations and fuel your addiction, and you can't stand up for yourself and say no, then you're going to be right back here again, and I assure you that. And I'm looking at her like, say what? You got me twisted, girl. I didn't say that though. But yeah, so, you know, she just really, you know, then there was another time, you know, AA would come in, familiar faces would come into the prison and do meetings, and NA too. And I was just like, oh my God, I feel at home again, you know? And I was starting to get back right, even behind those concrete walls, you know? And my people were coming to see me, and I knew that I was going to be doing AA when I got out, and just good things were happening behind there. And then, so I got 4 years time. In state time, if you are nonviolent, which my charge was nonviolent because I did not do anything of any intent or purpose. It just so happened to be the circumstances, you know, that led to my charge, unlawful child neglect. I never did say the charge. And I was, you know, I was going to go up for parole. And they shared this opportunity about the peer support program. And I was like, peer support? Well, I knew that some peer supports were, you know, along with AA and NA were coming on the unit. And I graduated from the program. I worked as a cadre, which was like the leader of the HE program, as an inmate, to show that, hey, this program does work, and kind of, you know, I was kind of being a peer support before I even became a peer support, you know, on the unit, and just, you know, hey, we've done some things we shouldn't do, but this recovery thing, this really works, and this sounds like this is the way to go, you know, and just influence and be positive. And so I was allowed to stay on that unit. On that unit, I was not considered GP. I was protected, you know, on that unit. We were not allowed to talk to GP, and I did not want to talk to GP, because guess what they were doing out on GP? Using drugs, you know, this, that. So the peer support program, they came and said, hey, you know, we're going to do a training. DAODAS and SEDC have come together to do the peer support program, and we would like you to be a peer support. And I was like, peer support, that's awesome, you know. As someone who has some time in recovery, and, you know, you share your lived experience, and in hopes of, you know, being relatable to whoever you're trying to help, whoever's struggling, and give them hope that, you know, hey, we're going to find a way through this, you know, whatever way is best suited for you. It may not be my way. We're going to find your way, because nobody likes to be told what to do they? That never works. So we do it together, you know. And so I did the training, I passed the test, and I was a peer support for 4 months in prison, and worked as a peer support, you know, on my unit, you know, for 4 months before I went up for parole. I made parole, and when I got out, I waited about 3 months just to kind of get acclimated, spend some time with my mom, rebuild that relationship, and just kind of get used to life. I mean, I remember rolling up the window up and down, like, wow, like I was so, like, I thought it was so cool about the window rolling up and down in a car, because I hadn't seen a car in so long. I was on my mom's phone, like the phone, and she was like, hello, you know, I was just so, it was just so weird. Like, everything was just so different after being locked up for that amount of time. But I got a job 3 months after prison at Westview Behavioral Health in Newberry County. So I'm a peer support that serves in Newberry and Saluda County. I got right into the rooms, and my mom was, even though, so mind you, I never got my license before I went to prison. And you can't get your license, nor do you need one when you're in prison. So I was working to get my license back when I got out of prison. My mom was driving me to AA. My mom was coming to meetings that she'd be allowed to see me get my chip. And I just really had, my dad, you know, had quit drinking and using. He does not work a recovery program, but he is sober. You know, so I just really, you know, got my network and met some of my best friends in the program. I reconnected with the friends that never had a problem. They were always supportive of my recovery, and kept those that old lifestyle out. I had my mind made up and I knew what I needed to do. And so I started working as a peer support. I'm still working there now. I've had a job for 5 years without being fired, and I'm professional. Who would have thought, like, is this real or is this real? So then I got married. We're coming up on our anniversary in June 18th. He is in recovery, and he is also active in these rooms, and some of you may know him, but I will not share his name because y'all can't tell on me. And so a lot of good things have happened, you know, from behind those walls. I would not come out with a certification and a felony, and that my job, a prerequisite to have this job, is to have a felony or as many felonies as I want. And so I was like, this is awesome. And so, you know, I really love my job, and so after I got a little stable and a little sobriety under my belt, after 5 years, I decided to reapproach college, and I enrolled back at Limestone University. I am not an international business Spanish minor type of girl. I want to be a counselor and a licensed, well, I'm going for social work, so I want to be a licensed social work counselor and specialize in addiction. You know, yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me. And so I've been on the Dean's List. I won the John Sullivan Award, which is a mentor, and that I guess has since passed, and it's an honorary award through the social work program that Limestone recently recognized me for. If all goes well, because this one class is kicking my behind, but I should graduate with a college degree this December. So all these gifts of sobriety, you know, it's just amazing. And if it didn't have a story and all that tragedy and ups and downs and ins and outs and all the everything, you know, it wouldn't be who I am today, and I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't be as humble and willing to help another, you know. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm planning on doing the master's program after I finish my bachelor's. Like, who would have thought, you know? And all these, you know, all these gifts come from the rooms of AA, my network, my family, my support, my sobriety. Unfortunately, I had to take a hard left and bumpy road to get there, but I did. And you know, also too, that's really cool is I know that they tell you, you know, as you work the steps, and each time you work the steps, you learn something different. Well, that is true. Because at first I was like, this ain't changing. This is you know, this is it. You know, but it does change. And what's really cool is through an assignment that I had at school. For doing an assessment, and you asked all these questions, personal questions, I had to do one on myself. Ooh. And I was like, ooh. And then through working the steps too, at the same time, I started formulating like a whole new idea of like why things kind of happened the way they did. I realized that I was way more hard on myself than I should have. I've always been an anxiety and perfectionist, and you know, it wasn't my mom telling me, you gotta do good in school, or, you know, or whatever. Like, it was me. It was all me. I put so much pressure on myself, and I still do that today, you know. And so I'm working on that too, you know. But I learned about this thing about post-traumatic, stress. And I learned about that, and I was like, oh my God, that's me. And I feel like we've all had that in the sense that, you know, the resiliency that we form, and the motivation, and the things that we have gone through that we can use for the good, that we use those things for the better, to help another person. And it's just a whole new little outlook on things, and it aligned with my step work. And I was like, this is wild, you know, that I'm continuing after 6 years of sobriety to learn more about myself and learn more about my recovery. So anyway, that's it, and thank you for letting me share, y'all.